In this episode, we are going to talk about the most important aspect of any role-playing game. You guessed it, magic. I suggest some important skills that your character should never be without, and I challenge you about combat traits. Welcome to the Mythras Matters podcast, Season 1, Episode 60. Why not give magic a chance? Hello and welcome to Mythras Matters, a podcast dedicated to the Mythras rule set and all its supplements. As always, I'm your host Inwils and welcome to August. Okay, I admit it, I was trying to add a bit of clickbait to the title and intro. I know some groups are not excited by magic like I am, and I assume some of you run campaigns with no magic in them at all. I've discussed all the spheres of magic available in Mythras already, and in this episode I wanted to look at the basis of all magic and whether or not we should include it into our campaigns. Before that, can I say episode 60 again? I really can't believe that we have recorded and published 60 episodes. That's quite an achievement, I think. Interestingly enough, I'll be 60 in 3 years' time and will be looking forward to retiring. But before you get excited, I won't be retiring from Mythras Matters. I'll be retiring from my normal work. So yeah, I will have ample time to produce more content. I always think of August as the middle of summer, but really after Midsummer's Day, which we celebrated last month, we are well on our way to autumn. Days should be getting shorter. Although it is still actually quite light at 5 a.m. when I crawl out of bed to get some content work done before going to my part-time job. When I'm world or campaign building, I store all my campaign information on World Anvil, and the world information I create and store is so minor compared to the true world builders on that site. The site allows you to create calendars and timelines. I have tried to implement a calendar in our campaign world, but never managed to keep it going. I like the idea of an ongoing year, including celebrations. An adventure plotline could be focused on an upcoming festival, and there could be that realization in one of the sessions when a party states that there are only a few more days before the festival of Argos. I probably have to think of a better name for the festival, but you know what I mean. Do you have an ongoing calendar in your games or campaigns? If you do, and it works well, please do send me some tips in the comments, or better still, come on the podcast and chat about it. As you know, we are always looking for new content. And speaking about content, huge thanks to everyone who has been answering the questions I pose in the podcast in the YouTube comments. I was so pleased that many of you stay right to the end of a podcast episode. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate anyone taking the time to comment. So please continue. Okay, enough waffling. Let's talk about why all campaigns should have magic. One of the biggest decisions we probably face as GMs is, do we include magic in our campaign or worlds? Magic is one of those things that you either love or hate. I know many players who will never create magic using characters, while others, including myself, who are inexplicably drawn to it. When we talk about magic, we often assume that we are referring to spell-wielding casters who cast fireballs into small rooms. But as a starting point, we need to acknowledge that implementing magic into the campaign might not be in the form of spell-casting wizards. Magic can come in many forms. For me, magic is something that is presented in a game that makes a difference. It is something that is unusual in the campaign, or even possibly weird. It sets the campaign world aside from the world which we live in, and often other people's worlds. I see magic as something that cannot be explained, but is available for characters to tap into and use. A source that is available if you know how to access and use it. In the Star Wars movies, they call this magical energy the Force, and in the Wheel of Time books and Prime episodes, they call it the One Power. Whether the power to drive this magic comes from deities or ancient heavy-bound books, magic is an energy source that, with the appropriate training and commitments, characters can bend to their will and use to create strange, wonderful, fantastic, or even deadly effects. When considering whether you want to include magic in your campaign, you need to consider what it looks like and whether there are different sources of power in the world. The sorcerers of Mythras are those spell-wielding wizards of fiction, but the mystics use the magical power in a different way. While sorcerers use magic to fuel and shape spells, mystics use the same power to augment their bodies and abilities. In my opinion, both are using the same source of power or magic. I have to admit, I used an easy and possibly lazy approach to magic in my current campaign. Rather than detailing it, I just said it was magic. But you don't need to be this lazy. Creating a magic system can be a great way to add depth to your campaign world. It can become an essential part of your campaign, one which can influence what your world looks like and how people interact. Although I was initially lazy in creating the source of magic, I put my energy into the orders of sorcerers. I wanted to replicate the feeling of the robed wizards in the Dragonlance books, hence the order of blue, red, white and black sorcerers. I'll put a link to my information about the orders in the show notes. Not only do the orders restrict the spells that each character can cast, it also supports how important spell casting is in the world. All sorcerers need to join an order. It is expected. Well, I should say it is required. Sorcerers who do not join an order are seen as renegade spellcasters who are to be tracked down and either converted or destroyed. That reminds me, I need to put some thought into creating what these squads compose of and how do they track down these renegade wizards. Referring to the Wheel of Time world, there is a similar restriction. Female spell users are the main casters, while any male casters using the One Power slowly become corrupted by the source. All the magic in Mythras is powered by magic points. This represents how much spell casting the character can do before they run out of power. So when implementing magic into our campaign worlds, we need to consider two things. How can characters replenish their magic points? And what happens when their magic points are depleted? If you have, unlike me, put in considerable thought about where your magic comes from, then how characters replenish their magic points should be quite simple. I went for the usual rest and recover idea. I did confess about not putting a lot of effort into this system. But campaign worlds can use many other forms of methods of replenishing or drawing on the power. In the Dark Sun world, drawing magic to fuel your spells draws the essence of life from surrounding area, causing vegetation to wilt, decay, and die. In a similar way, in a recent book I read, the magical power was taken from people themselves. Side note, I have looked through my audiobooks to try and find the title of this book, but can't find it anyway. So if you know which book I am talking about, then please do let me know in the comments. The evil mages just draw their power from their slaves, depleting their life force until they become desiccated husks on the ground. It is considered an honor to serve the casters in this way, while the good wizards do draw life force in a similar way, but would never take it all without the owner's permission and would never take everything from the human source. Just that small piece of information should set your thoughts into creating various possibilities for plot lines and situations. In Elder Scrolls Online, I main a necromancer, and many of my spells are enhanced by using corpses. To gain these corpses, I use spells like summoning a healing spirit. Once it stops or ceases to exist, it produces a corpse that I can use with other spells. Playing this main, I am always in the need of corpses, something that I think is apparent in the D&D 5th edition rules for necromancy as well. You always need a source of dead bodies to fuel your spells. And then there is what happens when the caster's power reserves run out. And can they push themselves beyond that point and keep casting spells into negative magic points? There's some options for what happens when magic points run out in the core rulebook, but the consequence should be linked to the source of magic your campaign uses. Again, I took the simple and basic way out here. When casters reach 0 magic points, then nothing happens. I probably need to talk to my players about this and see if they are happy about how I've implemented this, or would they rather add some other mechanic. I do like the idea of linking the use of magic points to willpower or possibly endurance. When the character loses hit points on their location, they need to make endurance checks to stay conscious. Should this be the same for spellcasters when they're using up their magic points? As they use the source of magic, their magic points, should they make checks to stay upright? In a recent actual play, Bartleby had 1 magic point left and was not sure what would happen if he used it up. What I do want to avoid is spellcasters being unconscious all the time. They have enough restrictions as it is. I do like the idea of going into negative magic points. There is something quite heroic if the caster drawing on the source of magic goes beyond their limits. If this is possible, does it start to cause physical damage to them? Or does it have a more permanent effect on them, making them go insane, or do they lose some of their magic pool altogether? The latter reminds me of many of the burnt out casters in so many works of fiction. Would you sacrifice your character to draw so much power that it kills them in order to save the party, village, or world? These heroic situations are only possible with magic in your campaign. In summary, there are some really important aspects of magic that you need to consider before including it in your campaign. How is the magic fueled? Where does the magic come from? And how do spellcasters access it? What can be done with the source of magic? Is it just casting spells, or can it be used to enhance abilities like a mystic? How do you replenish your magic points? And what happens if you use up all those magic points or even go into negative numbers? I do like magic. And one of the most important reasons for this is the potential of magic in a game. Not only can it add several layers of detail to your campaign, it also could provide a multitude of situations and plot lines. Now, before I talk about folk magic, let's have a little change of subject. Remember, if you would like to contribute to the podcast, why not just drop me an email or message and let me know what you would like to come along and chat about. I'm always looking for reviews, interviews with people. So if you are interested, you can email me at inwils@gmail.com or send me a message on the various forums and the Discord. As you might be aware, I have been learning 2 new programs to create encounters and adventures for Mythras under the new Orc license. I'm trying to produce 1 adventure and encounter per month to help all you busy GMs out there. This is my daily 5 a.m. task at the moment that I talked about earlier on. Anyway, when creating the encounter for September, a barroom brawl, I made some NPCs or possible pre-gen characters for the encounter. One of these was an NPC called Sneaky Sue. Yes, I like alliteration. I decided that she would be a backstabbing character, and I started to look into combat traits. Now, we had never used these in our campaign. Initially, when I started with the rules, I thought it could be something that we could implement at a later date, but never did. Looking through them all, some of them are very nice, while others I don't think would be used in our campaign. For example, Daredevil is an excellent combat trait. No more being prone after those evade rolls. And assassination for those silent kills is also great. Well, set for a charge, will only be useful if there is the opportunity to defend against charging mobs, something that's not really happened that much in our campaign. So I'm interested, do you use combat traits in your own games? Are they an essential aspect of your combat, or do you find that you're almost like creating situations for characters to use these traits? Do let me know. And if you think they are essential for every campaign, or you are very passionate about them, then send me an email and we can have a chat about them on the podcast. You never know, you might be able to convert me to using them. The simplest magic in Mythras has to be folk magic. They have short durations and casting times and a default intensity and magnitude of 1. Despite this, folk magic is very flexible and can be included in your campaign in a variety of ways. In our campaign, they form the basic spells of the main spheres of magic. For example, they are the cantrips of the sorcerers and the prayers for the theist. But this, again, is probably the simplest way to implement them. I'm beginning to realise that I am probably quite a lazy GM when it comes to world building. Folk magic could be how people demonstrate potential. Many of the spells are linked to trades or general skills, and the people wielding these spells might not actually understand what is happening. An example of this could be the protection spell. This prevents accidental damage in the workplace. People might just view a person who uses this spell as lucky, or say that things never happen to them, or even when things fall, they fall very close to them and they don't ever have an injury. It could be that a character has folk magic and never thinks of themselves as a caster, with the GM using spells behind the scenes, with the player's involvement, of course. The crafter who works with leather always has the best stitching because they use a pierce spell when sewing, or housekeepers that use the polish spell to ensure that standards are always met. There are so many spells that could be used in this way. Folk magic could also be seen as potential. Sorcerers and theists might search for possible candidates to join their orders. Seeing these lucky or adept individuals could be a sign of greater power that lies within, or even demonstrate the possibility of wielding a greater power. This could lead to a testing regime. How do spell wielders of the campaign world test for potential? I am always vividly reminded about how Raistlin trials affected him, both with respect to his power and his own health. Maybe these trials are why there are only a few individuals who gain the ability to be the best spellcasters of the realm. Maybe others do not actually survive the trials. But it is possible that folk magic is not seen as spells at all. Consider the expert sword wielders of the world. They could be accessing folk magic through the use of katas or katas. Specific katas allow their blades to strike true, i.e. blade sharp, while others katas remove the fatigue of the character, vigor. This opens a new dimension for folk magic. Bards use folk magic as skills that they use magic points to cast, so they use voice to inspire others and might to be physically stronger. Dancers or even politicians could use glamour to impose or encourage people to view them as beneficial. And the thieves' skills could be using coordination and deflect. In these cases, the spells are not seen as spells per se, but just abilities and skills that the guild share with their followers. This could be an alternative approach to using folk magic where magic is very limited in the world, or the GM and players don't like it. For me, magic is what makes people weird and wonderful in my campaign world. I'm reminded of the character generation system in Judge Dredd. I only played that game once, but as you can imagine, I was instantly drawn to the side judges. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play one because you had to roll your strength using a 1d4, and if your strength was 1, you got the side skill. Mine was 2. However, this does show how rare the size skill was, and the same could be true with magic. Magic is what makes people dangerous in the world. Anyone can learn to fight with a weapon, only a few can wield the power of magic. But before I leave it as a point of discussion, I would like to leave you with a thought about how powerful magic is. Whenever you hear about people raising an army to achieve world domination, how often is it a fighter or a rogue type? Magic is the way to go with this. It brings not only power to the campaign world, but it adds details, depth, and a range of plot lines. And that is why, in my opinion, it is essential for any campaign world. Before I bring this episode to a close, I want to briefly talk about essential skills for characters to have. I think we would all agree that putting points into endurance, invade, and willpower and getting them to a good percentage is essential for any character. But are there any others? I purposefully left brawn out of the trio I mentioned earlier because I think it's only needed for those strong characters or for someone who has an impaling weapon. I think athletics should be included since it affects the character's ability to run and climb. Apart from that, I can't think of any other skills that new characters should be encouraged to invest skill rolls in. Since introducing spirits to our campaign, willpower has become a lot more important. Anyway, have I missed any off? I don't think so, but do let me know in the comments if I've missed out a skill that you think is essential for every character to have, or if you think my choices are incorrect and wrong. Always great to hear from you. And that's it, another episode of Mythras Matters completed. Don't forget you can check out all my content by following my YouTube channel, the campaign areas on World Anvil, and my Ko-fi site where you can find the encounters and adventures I produce. I really appreciate your support, and do check out the Discord and Tapper Talk forums where there are some great people sharing their ideas within discussions. So, until next time, have a great month of gaming, and I will chat to you all in September. Until then, I hope that all your opposed rolls succeed and provide you with a well-deserved special. Thanks for listening, everyone. See ya. Bye. The content of this podcast is covered by the Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, so please give appropriate credit if you are sharing or copying any part of this podcast. Thank you. Oh, and this is coming right at the end of the podcast, so if you're still listening, thank you. I'm not too sure what's happened to the mic or the sound quality. I do apologize, but I've spent hours trying to sort it, and I just think I'm just going to go with it, and I hope it didn't spoil your enjoyment of the episode. Thanks for listening, everyone. See ya. Bye.